Welcome to chapter 12. So we're going to be learning about productivity and growth. So when you say productivity, what does this mean? So productivity is simply real GDP per person. So we know what national income is or GDP is. It's referring to how productive or like basically the total production of an economy, right? But productivity now is worker specific, right? Not just population specific or person specific, but worker specific, time specific. So basically it's going to be calculated as GDP divided by, of course, you divide by population. You still divide by how many hours are worked in a day, right? So for instance, you have 24 hours a day. Let's say you only work 8 hours. Your productivity is going to be based on per hour. So how much were you able to produce per hour as a person, for instance? So, right? So population or person, per person, and per hour, right? So either per hour, per day. So let's just call this per time. So let's just say per time. So this could be hour, day, month, right? All of that, or even week. All right, so and real, so it has to be the top has to be real GDP, so not nominal GDP but real GDP that already accounts for inflation, then divided by the population to get per capita, remember capita per person, and also divided by how many hours you actually work in a day or in a given time period. So that gives you the productivity. And there are several factors that determine the productivity of any country. The determinants include things like human capital. So human capital are the skills that an individual possesses, right? So for instance, a baker, a chef has certain cooking skills or baking skills, right? Which is different from the skills that a pilot has, right? So human capital refers to the skill. It also captures things like education. So your education, your training, and your skills, right? So it's just referring to the skills in which you add to the labor market. That is human capital. And then fiscal capital, we've talked about fiscal capital, the machineries and infrastructure that are used to facilitate the production of other goods, e.g. your blender, right? So you can use a blender, you can use a microwave, you could use an oven, a griller, the machineries used in the factories for production. All of that are fiscal capital, right? That is used to facilitate other production. And then other things that influences productivity are savings, right? So most likely a country that consumes more than they save is going to have less productivity, right? So you're consuming all your spending, all your income, and not saving or investing as much, then definitely there's a limit to how productive you can be. So savings and investment goes a long way. Investments, it goes a long way in influencing productivity. Something else that influences productivity is property rights. So technology, let's talk about technology. Technology is something, it facilitates production, right? So the better the technology, the more the productivity. And also technology has something called patent rights. So there's technology, and this is covered by patents. So what is patents? Patents are is like a license issued by the government that protects the company for a new innovation. So let's say a company develops a new drug in the market, a new medicine in the market to cure an ailment. It costs a lot of money to develop, bring in a new innovative medicine or, a new innovative product to the market, right? That costs a lot of money. So then the government then says, okay, you have this exclusive rights to this good. No other company can produce what you are producing. So you have to make your money back as an entrepreneur, as a business person. So the government gives, like, let's say 5 years patent, 10 years patent, where no one else can produce what you are producing. You are the sole producer in the market. So you have that market power to be able to gain back all the money you spent on the research, right? So that brings us to the next thing, research and development. So research, RD, research and development, that helps in improving the skills, and that helps in improving the technology that aids production, right? So research and development is very important in influencing productivity. Something else, I talked about property rights. So property rights refers to, like, how we have that refers to, like, protecting land and houses, right? So that someone else, an illegal occupant, doesn't take it over. And there's even, like, so how as writers, creative writers and all of that, they have rights to that protects their writing, so that no one else plagiarizes their work or takes away their skills, whatever the worked hard put in the market. Then government structure is something else that influences productivity. So when you talk about government structure, if the structure doesn't, so like if they don't have like good infrastructure in place, if the institution is not sound, then that could frustrate the work of individuals and the firms and all of that. So if you have a corrupt government, for instance, then definitely that's going to frustrate productivity, right? So that's that about determinants of productivity. And that brings me to the next thing called catch-up effect. What is a catch-up effect? So basically, I don't know if you've heard of the Asian tigers. So the Asian tigers in the 19th century were known as 4 Asian countries that took the world by surprise, right? So these countries were like developing countries, they did not have like much, recognition in the international space. And then all of a sudden they overtook in terms of like the GDP, their national income, their productivity, they overtook most of the developed countries, right? And these four Asian tigers are known as, there's Hong Kong, there's Taiwan, there's Singapore, and there's South Korea, right? Right now, most recently, an Asian country that is dominating the international space is China, because they have so much production base, right? So they have a lot of influence in the international space. Okay, so these catch-up effects is saying how these developing countries are able to overtake developed countries in terms of productivity and all of that. So basically, when you increase your labor, so let's just say resources, right? So when you increase your labor, your capital, all of that, it's supposed to lead to increased productivity, right? But for the developing countries, because they don't have as much resources or skills to, boost their productivity, they in terms of national income and GDP, they perform less than the developed countries. However, the developed countries get to a point where they have so much resources, they have utilized the most out of their resources. So if they increase their resources beyond a particular point, they've reached their peak, they've reached their limit, right? So therefore, the developed countries kind of become stagnant or even sometimes have a decline, right? So that is known as diminishing returns. So take, for instance, you are very hungry, you are very thirsty, you take a bottle of, let's say, lemon juice, right? You take the first bottle, you're feeling good, it quenches your thirst, but you still want some more. So you take the second bottle, you still end up you even feel better, right? But by the third, fourth bottle, diminishing return sets in, meaning that you've reached your capacity of satisfaction, right? So at that point, taking any extra bottle of lemon juice is just going to make you, less productive and, make you even feel sick if you're not careful, right? So too much of something is not good. But like, that's what diminishing returns is saying, that, for instance, let's even talk about the job space. You have one employee, and, you have one worker, it's good. By the time you add the second worker, you're able to produce more, right? You add the third worker, you're able to produce more. You add the fourth worker, you're able to produce more. But when you have too many workers in a particular space, then it becomes a distraction, right? Because then there's less work to do than the workers, and then people become lazy, people become idle and nonchalant, show up to work late, they're not being as productive on the job. So when you now have too much labor, it has the opposite effect and reduces productivity, right? So that is what the catch-up effect is about, that developed countries, initially they're increasing their capital, their labor, all their resources, and they're increasing productivity, and then they reach a certain stage and they become, kind of stagnant or, sometimes experience a decline, and that gives chance for developing countries to catch up in terms of the growth, right? So they're able to catch up in terms of the growth, and then overtake some of the developed countries. So that is the catch-up effects. The last thing I want to quickly talk about is foreign FDI, which is foreign direct investment, versus FPI, which is foreign portfolio investment. So foreign portfolio investment refers to our investment outside of the country. So you have American companies, like Walmart, like Kroger, but they have branches in other countries, right? So that is known as a foreign portfolio investment, and that influences the international space. Then there is foreign direct investment. Foreign direct investment is the opposite. Foreign direct investment is when internationals or foreign people have investment in a domestic space, right? So when you have, like, let's say Mercedes-Benz, it's a foreign owned brand, right? And them having a branch in the US, so that's going to count towards the foreign direct investment. So foreign direct investment is when foreigners invest domestically, right? So let's say in US. And then FPI is when domestic people invest abroad. Okay. And that's that for chapter 12. If you have any questions, as usual, feel free to let me know so I can explain or attend to any concerns that you have. Thank you.